what if the Rams are really like looking good and they're 3-1 after 4 weeks and
Jonathan
they
Taylor.
make a trade for Jonathan Taylor? And we're talking about a Rams team that then has Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, Jonathan Taylor. That'd be nuts. Absolutely.
It would
nuts.
be fun.
Week 2 is almost in the books. Monday Night Football pending tonight, but we already got to start looking forward to week 3. We are giving you 35 players to target on the waiver wire this week. Dave, start us off with the quarterback position.
I mean, I'm going to keep talking about this guy every single week until he is rostered in 100% of leagues. Anthony Richardson is still available in 20% of leagues out there. I don't know if there's 20% of leagues that are just dead and nobody's playing with him at all, or if 20% are just asleep at the wheel, but he got knocked out of last week's game and still put up 18 points, playing less than half a game of football. He put up 22 weeks in his NFL debut. The Shane Steichen offense is going to be great for him. He just has that profile where he is going to accumulate a ton of fantasy points. He's going to be a high floor, high ceiling QB1 every single week. Obviously, he's got the concussion to worry about, so we don't know if he's going to be there for week 3 or not, but either way, pick up Anthony Richardson. There's no reason he should be available in any leagues at this point.
That was very much the Bernie Sanders speech. I am once again asking you to pick up Anthony Richardson. We'll keep doing it until he's 100% rostered.
And you know what? If he's 85% rostered next week and he's still available in 15% of leagues, we're going to open the show talking about Anthony Richardson. He shouldn't be available in any leagues at this point.
Let's just keep going until week 18. Next quarterback here is Daniel Jones, Giants quarterback. I know, it's crazy. The tale of 2 weeks. He had 32 points in week 2. He was actually pretty good. And he may not be the best NFL quarterback, but he's a darn good fantasy quarterback. That week 1 matchup against Dallas was brutal. Listen, he had 43 yards and then 59 rushing yards in his first 2 starts here. So the rushing floor is going to be there, even if maybe the offensive production for the Giants is not. Now, without Saquon Barkley, they might lean on that Daniel Jones rushing floor a bit more. There's a tough week 3 matchup here against San Francisco. Short week on Thursday Night Football. It could be ugly. That could lend even more Daniel Jones running, but he should be a top 15 plug-and-play quarterback for most weeks.
Yeah, my start of the week last week, and I got to say, the first half of that game, I was sweating. It wasn't pretty, but the start of the week ended up playing out all right.
All right, Dave, give us your next quarterback.
Matthew Stafford, 300-plus yards in back-to-back weeks. He's back, baby. I mean, this looks like the same Matthew Stafford we saw 2 years ago when he won a Super Bowl and was the QB5 in fantasy scoring. He looks just like his old self, and he's got Cincinnati and Indianapolis coming up in the next 2 weeks, which very much so mean that he is going to be in play as kind of a back-end QB1 streamer. So, I mean, I hate to say this because it's still a little bit early to write him off, but like if you've got Joe Burrow right now and you're not feeling too good about these first 2 weeks, I'd be A-okay picking up Matthew Stafford and streaming him ahead of a guy like Joe Burrow in week 3.
Jordan Love is 40% available in fantasy football leagues, and he is the quarterback 2 overall in fantasy football right now with Monday Night Football pending. Jordan Love, Green Bay Packers. This was my bold prediction, like just out of fun, being silly. I was like, he's going to score more points than Aaron Rodgers. I think even with a healthy Aaron Rodgers, we're talking about Jordan Love outscoring him at this point because he's outscoring pretty much everyone. 3 touchdowns in back-to-back starts here to really start out his career. He's doing this without his top receiver, Christian Watson, and missed Aaron Jones last game as well. He's got New Orleans, Detroit, Las Vegas. Pretty solid schedule here coming up. He's starting to creep into that quarterback 1 territory, more than just a super flex option, more than just a streamer. I think if he does it again, Dave, like we just have to look at him as a legit plug and play option every single week at the quarterback spot.
Yeah, just needs to work on his snap counts a little bit on the QB sneaks. I'm sure you saw that play going around,
it was so
right?
awkward. So awkward.
Cringe. All right, well, I'll wrap up with the quarterbacks here, though, and I want to talk about Jared Goff because he's still available in over 50% of leagues. And again, we're looking at these kind of back-end QB1, high-end QB2 streamers where you're kind of looking at these guys on a matchup base, and his next 2 matchups are against Atlanta and Green Bay, which could be pretty solid matchups. Unfortunately, Jared Goff didn't hit the consecutive completion record without an interception. He did throw an interception last week, but he still hit the 3-touchdown mark, and he looked very, very good. This is a high-flying pass attack. They're going to throw the ball a lot. Jared Goff is really coming on at this point in his career. So these next 2 weeks against Atlanta and Green Bay, I would be A-okay streaming him as a back-end QB1.
I blame myself for the Jared Goff jinx.
You jinxed him.
I talked all about how he hasn't thrown an interception in so long, and of course, it happens. Well, if you're enjoying this so far, please be sure to like this video, leave a comment down below asking about your week 3 waiver wire options that you're looking at, and be sure you subscribe to the channel. We are bringing you this show every single day, Monday through Thursday. We go Fridays on audio only, and then Sunday mornings we are helping you with a live start sit to get you ready for the week of fantasy football action. Now let's get into everyone's favorite position for some reason here in fantasy football, the running backs. Dave, kick us off.
It blows my mind that I had to like double take this when I saw that Brian Robinson is still available in 16% of leagues. So you might be listening to this right now and say, Brian Robinson, he was an 8th round, 9th round pick in my league. He's not available. Sure. All right. Just skip to the next player. But Brian Robinson is still available in some leagues out there, and he absolutely shouldn't be. I talked about this guy in my starts of the week show as my favorite running back start. He is one of the closest things that we're going to see to a workhorse in today's modern NFL, where every single backfield is split up in a committee. Brian Robinson is still getting a massive share of the workload. He had 18 carries and 3 targets last week, compared to Antonio Gibson's 2 carries and 3 targets. And that is very similar to what we saw in their week 1 workloads as well. He's averaging over 20 fantasy points per game. He's getting goal line work. He's getting receiving work. He was a zero running back savior for anybody who punted running back down the position. It feels like you got a legitimate RB1 that you can plug in every single week, but he's still available in some weeks. So he is a priority add, a plug and play guy going forward. I can't believe that we have to talk about Brian Robinson at this point, but he's still available in some leagues. So if he is, go out and get him.
Yeah, here's another guy that I'm pretty surprised he's still available, but I get it because he might have been dropped after week 1. That's DeAndre Swift. I chickened out. He was going to be one of my trade targets in our trade target episode last week, and I chickened out because I was like, no, that's not good advice. Like, I can't tell someone to go buy low on a guy that got 1 carry, right? And then, of course, DeAndre Swift comes out Thursday night, has the best game of his career, 31 touches, 181 yards and a touchdown. Could have had 2 more if not for the old tush push. He's running behind a really good offensive line, and he looked good. The only thing that I could worry about here, maybe 2 things, is what happens when Kenneth Gainwell returns. Excuse me. What happens when Kenneth Gainwell returns? And then also, man, if they're giving him 31 touches in the first game, I'm wondering how long he holds up like this. But if for any reason he's available, someone dropped him from week 1 and he's still sitting on that waiver wire after Thursday Night Football, go out and grab him. I'd be shocked if he loses a starting job or the majority of the carries after how good he looked against Minnesota.
Yeah, I'll go with Kyren Williams here, who I don't think I've got to tell you to go out and pick up Kyren Williams after what we saw in week 2, but he's still available in 41% of leagues. Similar workload and efficiency, which to what we saw in week 1 on the ground, which, I mean, frankly, wasn't really that good. Just rushing for around 3 yards per carry, but he saw a ton of workload. But what really excited me for the week 2 workload was that he jumped from 2 targets to 10 targets. 10 targets for a running back. You heard that right. Now, he caught 6 of those targets for 28 yards and a touchdown. I don't expect him to continue seeing that much work through the air, but they have put Cam Akers on the trade block. It seems like it is Kyren Williams' backfield to own now. The receiving upside is going to be really tough to maintain, especially if and when Cooper Kupp could return in a few weeks, but drastically raises the ceiling here for a guy who hasn't looked especially great on the ground, but it seems like he's got the faith of the coaching staff. We know the volume is going to be there. So Kyren Williams, for now, is a guy that you can easily plug in as a starting running back.
You mentioned Cam Akers there. I think he's worth a speculative add in deep leagues. I think a lot of people are going to be super frustrated and just drop him. But if he does get traded, he does end up on another team. By the way, that's the most toxic relationship in all of Hollywood. You'd think it'd be like one of these celebrities, actors. Nope. It is Cam Akers and Sean McVay. There's something weird going on there. I don't get it. Change of scenery is probably going to be best for it. But if Cam Akers is out there, go and grab him. I'm going to talk about another guy who is available in 69% of leagues.
Nice.
Gus Edwards. Okay, we're getting back aboard the Gus bus here, man. He averaged over 5 yards per carry for his career. And it's not just like a small sample size either. This is 500 plus carries over multiple years. He's been the guy for Baltimore in the past. Whenever J.K. Dobbins has gone down, Gus Edwards has jumped in. He's got the size for the goal line work. And I know that as of right now, the usage still leans towards Justice Hill and even like a little bit in the goal line stuff too, Dave. But I do believe that Gus Edwards is going to continue to get a little bit more work here. I think he looked a little bit better on Sunday. I think both of these guys could become flex worthy because that passing offense has not quite taken off how we thought.
Yeah, I'll talk about Zach Charbonnet, who's still available in 50% of leagues out here. And obviously, I was touting Zach Charbonnet pretty hard in the offseason, and I'm not trying to just confirm my priors here, but we haven't seen a ton of him
Sure.
through. I mean,
I'm
I
just
still think he's
bothering
a
you. I'm
good
just
player,
bothering you.
and
He
we
is.
saw
Of
the
course he is.
usage. We saw the usage ramp up a little bit in week 2. Now make no doubts about it. I think this is Kenneth Walker's backfield. Kenjamin Walker III has proven that he deserves every touch that he gets. But we saw the touches get a little bit closer in a week 2 matchup. And what really excited me is that Charbonnet did see 2 targets, which we didn't see any targets in week 1. And he saw some goal line work as well. That's kind of the role that I had envisioned, is that he can take on some of these high value touches. And he looked pretty good in that role. Didn't get a touch near the goal line, unfortunately, but he did pick up a blitz near the goal line, which looked really good, and averaged 7 yards per target in the receiving game. So one of those guys that I don't know if we're going to see the role I had envisioned, where you can kind of plug him in as a standalone value type of guy, but the contingent upside is still there on a team that really likes to run the ball. So he should be a stash in every league right now.
Ken Walker, surprisingly, getting all those what we call the green zone touches. It is like right there by the goal line. He's still getting those, man. And I think he's showing the ability to actually convert those this year. He's been a better, more mature runner this season. So I think that's been a little bit of what's holding off Zach Charbonnet at the moment. But he still has value going forward, Charbonnet. I'm going to get to Zach Moss. He was my running back start of the week last week, and I'm going to pat myself on the back, man. This one turned out phenomenal. Zach Moss is getting all of the volume, all of the running back snaps, all of the touches. He was on the field for 98% of the Colts snaps on offense.
That's unheard of in today's NFL. Nobody gets 98% of the snaps. That's like you haven't seen that since like 1993.
Who's your boy? Marion Motley. That's
Marion Motley. Yeah.
Zach Moss, the new Marion Motley. You know what's crazy too is that he is super consistent with the usage here that we're seeing and how the Colts have used him. He's averaged 18 carries per start in Indianapolis when Jonathan Taylor was out. Guess what? He got 18 carries again. It's weird. It's weird. It's likely that DeAndre Swift, Brian Robinson, some of these Gus Edwards, some of these other running backs that we mentioned may not be available, but not everybody hopped on the Zach Moss train last week. Okay. He's still available in 71% of leagues. So Zach Moss would be my number 1 running back priority on waivers. If you need some help here, you get at least 2 weeks of what should be a top 24 running back. And if Jonathan Taylor does get traded or does not want to play, Zach Moss becomes a big time ad that now could help just catapult your team into those fantasy playoffs.
I'm sure we're going to talk about Zach Moss a lot this week. Let me just throw this out to you really quickly. If both guys are available in your league, Zach Moss and Kyren Williams, both coming off huge week 2 performances, do you prefer Zach Moss to Kyren Williams? Sorry to completely put you on the spot here, Alfredo.
I think they're both average running backs.
Right.
But I think that the thing that you're looking at here, that's the thing that you're looking at here, right, is the workload. Kyren, I think, is getting more of that receiving work, and I think he's in a better offense. Whereas you always have that pending doom of Jonathan Taylor coming back, which, by the way, I kind of wanted to make this connection. What if the Rams are really looking good and they're 3-1 after 4 weeks and make a trade for Jonathan Taylor? And we're talking about a Rams team that then has Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, Jonathan Taylor. That'd be nuts. Absolutely.
It would be fun. I think I give the slight edge to Kyren Williams, and I like both of these guys. I think they're both priority additions, but I think that Kyren Williams has a better likelihood maybe of maintaining that role for the whole season, where Zach Moss, I think for the next 2 weeks, is a plug-and-play smash play. But there is the looming fear that maybe Jonathan Taylor just says, hey, I want that job back. What are you doing out there, Zach Moss? That's my job. So that's the only fear with Zach Moss, is that he could potentially lose the role by week 5, where I think Kyren Williams looks a little bit more likely to just maintain it for the full season.
Yep.
I'll talk about Justice Hill here, and this is a guy that I have had a soft spot in my heart for since he came into the league. Former fourth rounder who looked pretty good as a prospect and just hasn't ever really put it together. But he saw more carries and 100% of the running back targets on Sunday. So even though Gus Edwards was getting involved, he was still outtouched by Justice Hill and ceded all of the passing down work to Justice Hill. And Justice Hill actually got first crack at the goal line touch as well, Gus Edwards just happened to be the guy to punch it in. So I actually prefer Justice Hill to Gus Edwards over the rest of the season. I think he is a great fit in this new revamped Todd Monken offense that we talked about a lot this offseason. There might be an opportunity to buy low on him as a trade throw-in if he is already on somebody's roster, but if he is available, he is a priority pickup for me. I think that there is going to be a split here. It's going to be Justice Hill and Gus Edwards. I think Justice Hill just has the higher ceiling with his involvement in the passing game and being a little bit younger. So still available in almost 30%, still available in almost 70% of leagues. I'm trying to get Justice Hill wherever I can.
Yeah, those Baltimore Ravens running backs, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I think they're both flex worthy, but you heard it here. Dave leans Justice Hill. I lean Gus Edwards. Just go out and get one of them if you need him.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Tyjae Spears, running back for the Tennessee Titans. He's still available in 87% of leagues, despite having more snaps in week 1 than Derrick Henry. And then in week 2, he still comes out and he gets second most opportunities on the team, Dave. Combined carries and targets, 10, which was second most on this team, right behind the incomparable Derrick Henry, who just got a ton of carries out there in week 2. As of right now, I think that Tyjae is still a bench player. He may be a flex at some point. He had 8.5 PPR points this last weekend. He's averaging 6.9 yards per carry. Nice. I mean, I'm just saying, Tyjae Spears has looked really good. He was one of my favorite running backs coming out of college. The way he's able to move in the open field is just incredible. I, once again, chickened out because of the knee stuff, right? The cartilage, the ACL, all the reports. And that was more of like a dynasty long-term thing here. But for redraft, if we're looking at this season, we're seeing that Tyjae Spears is being used in very interesting ways. He's getting touches, and he's going to be used in that receiving game. Ryan Tannehill looked better. The offense looked better. I think that Tyjae Spears is worth a speculative add to have him stashed on your roster.
Yeah, maybe we were too quick to write off Ryan Tannehill after week 1 because, like, everything that looked terrible in week 1, he actually looked kind of decent yesterday. I got to give it to Ryan Tannehill. He looked a lot better yesterday than he did in week 1. I'm going to talk about Roschon Johnson here again, a guy that I talked about a lot this offseason. We see that snap share really tightening up, and it's only week 2. Yesterday, Khalil Herbert saw 30 snaps. Roschon Johnson saw 22 snaps. So I don't know if he's going to completely overtake him, but it is looking very much so like a 1A, 1B split. Roschon Johnson averaged twice as many yards per carry. He had a pretty big run in an otherwise quiet, slow, and boring day for the Bears offense. And Deonta Foreman was a very surprising healthy scratch. So what that indicates is that this three-headed monster that we were kind of concerned about is getting a little bit less muddy than we originally thought. Now it's going to be Khalil Herbert and Roschon Johnson. Roschon Johnson obviously has more involvement in the passing game. Looks like probably the most explosive player on this offense behind DJ Moore. So could be some standalone value here if the Bears offense can start to hum a little bit. But at worst, he's got a ton of contingent upside as a potential RB1 if something happens to Khalil Herbert.
I'll say this, and I know I'm the president of the Khalil Herbert fan club, so many people will take this with a grain of salt, but Khalil Herbert is getting used in that passing game a little bit more. And even on that interception to Shaq Barrett, Justin Fields was targeting Khalil Herbert in that screen game. It seems like that's where
it looked
Justin
like
Fields
he was targeting Shaq Barrett to me. I mean, he threw it right into his mid.
That's exactly what he did. But honestly, it looks like Justin Fields is trying to target these running backs a bit more than maybe we've seen in the past. And I just don't know if he's uncomfortable throwing that ball deep downfield. I have some concerns about that Bears offense. As much as I love Khalil Herbert and even Roschon Johnson and Justin Fields and all these guys, I'm concerned.
Now, all I want to say is, and I'm not trying to really sound like a huge homer here, but last year Justin Fields was the QB 31 through week 4, and then week 5 rolled around and he just said, screw it, I'm not playing in the confines of this offense anymore. Joe. I'm just going to run the ball. And then he was a QB 3 for the rest of the year. So I am hoping that maybe Justin Fields does that again and just says, you know what, I'm done playing in this offense. I'm just going to run like the horse that I am and just rack up 100 yards a game. So I don't know. Maybe that's me trying to find the silver lining here. Maybe Justin Fields does it again because right now, this offense is bad.
Dave just called Justin Fields a horse.
I mean, he takes like 5-yard strides. Like when you watch him galloping across the field, it's unbelievable. Like the way that he can just eat up ground when he's running the ball. I mean, yeah, he looks like a racehorse out there.
If there's anything that could have derailed our quick-paced transactional waiver wire show, it's talking about Justin Fields being a horse. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Let's get to our next running back. I'll talk about Devon Achane. You got to talk about your team a little bit. I'm taking a look at the Miami Dolphins running back Devon Achane. He got his first action last night versus the New England Patriots and immediately got targeted in the passing game. He got himself a nice carry up the middle, gained about 5 yards on that, and it wasn't a whole lot of volume, but Jeff Wilson's still on IR. Savon Ahmed left the game with a groin issue. And all it takes is just a couple of carries, a couple of touches for Devon Achane to show his value. This is a guy that the team drafted highly this past year. It's a backfield that we know struggles to stay healthy. I would not be surprised if 3, 4, 5 weeks from now, we're talking about Devon Achane being a real part of this offense. And if anything is to happen to Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle, knock on every single piece of wood in my house right now, Devon Achane becomes a real legit receiving weapon out of the backfield that can line up anywhere. So he's a guy that I would be stashing if you have the space. You don't have to go crazy and go after him, but he's a guy I would be stashing.
Yeah, and we're really scraping the bottom of the barrel with these last few guys that we're talking about. This is for your deep leagues, your 14-teamers, your 10-player benches, and things like that. But Jaleel McLaughlin, I don't have a ton to say about him, but he had as many carries as Samaje Perine. I mean, it's kind of a three-headed gross committee there in Denver, but Jaleel McLaughlin might be the RB2. Again, we're talking about a guy that is available in 99% of leagues right now. I'm not saying that you got to go sell the farm to get Jaleel McLaughlin on your team, but you got a goal line carry as well. Javonte Williams hasn't looked too good. Samaje Perine hasn't looked too good. He might end up leapfrogging some of these guys at one point. We heard the drumbeat all throughout the offseason, and he got some work yesterday. So worth a speculative ad in your deep, deep, deep leagues.
Yeah, you mentioned Samaje Perine. Pour one out for our boy Joey Wright, the ultimate Samaje Perine fan club president, because not looking great. Not looking great.
No.
All right, let's get to our final running backs that we have here. I'll talk about Sean Tucker for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The pendulum started to swing back in favor of Rachaad White this last week. Rachaad White did have himself a game. I'll say this. I'm still not convinced on Rachaad White. I think we have more than just a good single game of usage and production that we can look back at. He just has not been an efficient runner. Not that Sean Tucker was any better. This is not me saying Sean Tucker is the better runner. This is more so me saying that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense is finding success through passing and hitting Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and using that early. I'm worried about when this team turns into a pumpkin, because I'm not sure that Baker Mayfield is really this good. I think Mike Evans might be one of those sell high kind of guys. Sean Tucker could start to get more work in this backfield, and he already has. He had 35% of the early down work. Like we said, this is a deep league only stash, but this backfield, if things start to change in this offense, it could become a two-headed monster, two-person backfield very soon. Sean Tucker, I think he's worth speculative ad in those deep leagues. He's available in 97% of fantasy leagues.
Sorry to keep getting off the rails here, but you don't think that Baker Mayfield is going to be this year's Geno Smith? I mean, I'm just saying, I made the comp. You put Geno Smith with Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. He looked really good.
Specifically because you made the comp is why I don't think it'll happen.
No, I love Baker Mayfield, man. I'm rooting for him, and he's in a good system now.
It's possible. I mean, last year we were sitting here saying, like, no, Geno, come on, Seahawks are going to be vying for that number one pick. So it's 100% possible. And we've seen that this offense is producing. He's doing the right things. He's not turning the ball over. He's getting the ball to his best players, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. I'm just wondering what happens when they go up against the good defense that can try to take away Mike Evans. Like, that's all I'm getting at. I don't know, man. It could go very hard in the other direction. Finishes off here with the running back spot.
Yeah, the final guy I'll talk about is Matt Breida, still available in almost every single league out there. Worth a pickup. I mean, he's the RB2 right now. Saquon left the game with what looks like it could be kind of a serious injury. I mean, he walked to the sidelines, immediately slammed his helmet down, getting x-rays after the game, talking about how his ankle was swollen. There's already murmurs that it could be a potential high ankle sprain, which is just like 4 to 6 weeks for a running back, and then bad production when they come back from the injury. So obviously Matt Breida going up in week 3 against San Francisco is not a spot you want to be in, but if he's going to get the volume, he's worth a desperation flex. And if there is going to be a lengthy missed period for Saquon Barkley, Matt Breida makes for a decent plug and play option to get you through some of those weeks.
Yeah, I talked about the Saquon Barkley injury with Dr. David Chow last night on the Week 2 injury recap show that we did. You can find that on the audio version of this podcast. Link will be in the description down below, where he talks about that injury for Saquon. And Dave, he corroborates what you're saying. It's that high ankle, definitely not playing this week. likely not playing for a couple more
Ugh.
weeks. So if you're a Saquon Barkley manager, you got to start making some moves for some of these other running backs. Matt Breida, excuse me, might be one of the cheapest guys to go get off waiver wire. Dave, let's move on over to the wide receiver position, where I don't understand how this man can be on waivers yet also simultaneously in the NFL Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I mean, pretty unbelievable. And this is probably the last time we'll ever talk about Puka Nacua on the waiver show, because he will absolutely be rostered in 100% of leagues after the performance that we
106%
saw.
of leagues. Doesn't even
Easily,
make sense.
at least. I'm taking the over at 100%, but he is still out there in 18% of leagues. Most receptions and most targets through a player's first 2 games in NFL history, and not just like barely past the record. Anquan Boldin had the record, and he smashed it. I mean, what this guy is doing right now to start his career is just unbelievable. 8 yards shy of Boldin's receiving record through the first 2 games as well. I mean, this guy just looks like a stud. You watch him on film, I hate to make the comp because it is so lazy and so boring, but he looks so much like Cooper Kupp out there in that same role, same level of production, same usage, and we haven't seen him in the end zone yet. So, I mean, once he starts hitting the end zone, then we're going to see that ceiling go sky high. And, you know, there is a chance that he flames out when Kupp returns, but right now he is worth a dump of your fab. I mean, whatever you've got, drop it on Puka Nacua, because he looks like he could be a top 10 receiver for the rest of the season. And even when Kupp returns, I mean, we saw this offense supporting Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods back in the day. No reason to think that they can't support Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua as well. So this is a guy right now, he'll be rostered on 100% of leagues this time next week, but you got to pick him up if you can.
Yeah, that was going to be my comment here, Dave, is that I think that I think I made a grave error in judgment in week 1. I needed to watch more Puka Nacua. I needed to watch more of that Rams offense, because I got to see it this week. And Puka, yes, while he is doing some of the things that Cooper Kupp has done, and yes, there are going to be concerns about how many footballs are there to go around, because Tutu Atwell's looked good, Tyler Higbee's still good, Kyron Williams is catching passes, but Puka Nacua is taking over that Robert Woods role. And I'm glad you mentioned his name, because he's doing those things where he's taking jet sweeps, he's catching balls out of the backfield. He's going to be doing things where I think when Cooper Kupp gets back, defenses are going to be keying on him. And there's going to be a lot of wide open Puka Nacua. That Sean McVay has a love for him. And we've seen when Sean McVay loves a player, that player is going to get used. And it's all about like the mental side of it. All the comments have just been that he understands the game differently. He sees the game the way that I do. It's a match made in heaven over there in Los Angeles.
Completely agree.
I'm gonna get to our next receiver here, and look at that. We don't have to freak out as much. All the guys that didn't score in week 1 got to score in week 3. I'm saying Drake London, T. Higgins, and then Sky Moore.
Keenan Allen.
Okay. What? I mean, Keenan Allen was good though. Like he's totally Big Bird in the conference room. Keenan Allen doesn't belong, but Sky Moore, 3 receptions on 4 targets, 70 yards, a touchdown. He caught a 54-yard deep ball, nice back shoulder fade for a touchdown. I don't want to overreact in one way or another at this point, but I mean, I don't think he should have been dropped in the first place. And then 2, I don't think you have to go out and spend a bunch of your fab on him, but this is a guy that I think with Travis Kelce out there, the pressure is off him to be that number 1 target. There is value to be had in this Kansas City Chiefs offense, and Sky Moore is available in 30% of leagues. So if he's out there, go and grab him.
Yeah, and I'll talk about the other guy in the Kansas City wide receiver room. First of all,
don't say his name though. You're not allowed to say his name.
First of all, Patrick Mahomes is dealing to everybody. I'm looking right now. He attempted passes to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 different receivers on Sunday. I mean, he is throwing the ball to anybody in a red jersey out there. But Kadarius Toney was second in targets behind only Travis Kelce. And guess what? He didn't drop the ball. He caught everything that came his way. They also gave another carry on a jet sweep, so they're trying to get the ball in his hands. And, I mean, you see it when he has the ball in his hands. Like, he's one of the most electric players out there. So, again, you know, he got dropped in a bunch of leagues after last week. He's available in almost 60% of leagues right now. He's absolutely worth a stash. I think that right now we're seeing the ball get spread out all over, but I think as the season progresses, we see it start to funnel a little bit more to Travis Kelce, Sky Moore, and Kadarius Toney. I think those are really the only 3 guys that you're ever going to feel confident plugging into your lineup.
We've gotten to a weird point where we're saying, hey, the receiver didn't drop it.
I mean, coming off a 4-drop game, it is pretty notable.
It's a good improvement, but we got
his drop rate was higher than most receivers' catch rates in week 1, so we got to talk about it.
We got to set the bar higher, man. We got to. All right, let's get to my number 1 wide receiver waiver wire pickup for this week, because let's face it, I don't think Puka Nacua is going to be available in most leagues. So I am going after Nico Collins, who through these first 2 weeks has looked phenomenal. This past week, 9 targets, led the team with a career high 146 yards, got himself a nice touchdown catch. The biggest thing here is I think we knew that Nico Collins was talented. What we were worried about is, when is there going to be a good passer? When is there going to be a quarterback that can unleash him? And I know it's 2 games into his career, but CJ Stroud looks very, very good. Nico Collins becomes an easy wide receiver 3 every week with upside depending on the matchup. And you know that, I mean, I know that this Texans team wants to slow things down and they want to play tough defense, but everything I've seen so far is that they're still going to pass the ball plenty. CJ Stroud is good improvising even when they're in a tough defensive matchup. They're going to have to pass this ball. And CJ Stroud continues to look the way of Nico Collins and, well, another teammate of his that we might talk about a little later. But yeah, Nico Collins, go out and grab him. That's my number 1 waiver wire priority add at the wide receiver position this week.
Yeah, he was one of my favorite targets this offseason and last offseason and the offseason before. But college. Hey, it's finally working for us. So, hey, Nico Collins, very alive. I'll talk about Zay Jones here. Picked up a knee injury that kept him very limited in week 2, but he still pulled 6 targets in limited work. And I think a lot of people are going to look at the box score and say, oh, well, Christian Kirk is the wide receiver 2, and they're going to drop Zay Jones. But I still think Zay Jones is the wide receiver 2 in this offense from everything that we saw in week 1. Looks like the number 2 guy behind Ridley was held at bay with this injury in week 2. So if anybody panic drops Zay Jones for whatever reason, I am picking him up. I think that he is going to be the number 2 pass catcher in a high-flying Jacksonville offense, and he's a guy that you can kind of play almost every single week as your wide receiver 3 if he's healthy.
We'll go faster through these here, because I'm talking about Jaden Reed. He's available in 86% of leagues. This past week, he led the team with 8 targets, 4 receptions for 34 yards. That's not the stat line that really gets you, but it's the targets, and it's the way he was getting these targets. A lot of manufactured touches. He finished the day with 2 touchdowns. And I think that what we've seen here now is he may have actually surpassed Romeo Doubs on this, on the target tree here. Because when Jordan Love is dropping back to pass, he is searching for Jaden Reed. They're finding easy targets for him. And I think this is something I talked about with Jaden Reed's profile when he got drafted by the Green Bay Packers, is he could become that Amon-Ra St. Brown for the Green Bay Packers and Jordan Love. And it kind of looks like we are getting to that point with the way these manufactured touches are being used and a lot of shallow crossers, things like that. He could still end up being the wide receiver 2 on this team when Christian Watson returns.
I'll talk about KJ Osborne, who I don't know if he's going to be the wide receiver 2 or the wide receiver 3. Jordan Addison, has been making some big plays, but hasn't really seen the target share that we had hoped for yet. But either way, I think even if KJ Osborne is going to be the wide receiver 3 on this team, this is a team that is passing the ball so much that the wide receiver 3 could still be a value in fantasy. Kirk Cousins is on pace for 748 pass attempts. I don't have to tell you that would be an NFL record. And KJ Osborne is on pace for over 100 targets. Got big play upside every single week. He's a big presence in the end zone. KJ Osborne's still available in over 70% of leagues. He is a guy that you can probably stream if you're getting a little thin at wide receiver.
Next guy I'm going to talk about is Marvin Mims, Denver Broncos wide receiver, another rookie that I really loved coming out in his draft class. This needs to be taken with a lot of context, okay? I know Marvin Mims, the fantasy points are going to look good. He only ran 6 routes. He was targeted 2 times on those 6 routes, so it is a good target per route run rate. We saw the big playability, and I'm sure that is going to lead to more opportunities out there. He'll earn more snaps because, you're not going to see him just catch 2 bombs per game like he did this past week. They've got Miami next week, who just gave up a pretty good amount of receptions to a not so great wide receiver core of Kendrick Bourne, Juju Smith-Schuster, Devontae Parker. That secondary has been struggling over there in Miami. So I can see how Marvin Mims, he's a stash. He's a stash. He's not a guy that you're starting or flexing or wide receiver 3. Like, he's a stash. Throw him on your bench. Just be patient.
Yeah, everything that you just said about Marvin Mims, I'm going to say about Jalen Hyatt. They kind of have their own Marvin Mims in New York. Only had 2 targets, but he turned those 2 targets into 2 receptions for 89 yards. like I said, very similar to Marvin Mims. Huge play upside every single time he gets the ball. Not somebody you can feel confident plugging into your lineup right now, but absolutely worth a stash in all formats.
Josh Reynolds, Detroit Lions wide receiver, available in 96% of leagues. This past week, everything went well for him. If you followed the advice of Jeff Bell in the Sunday morning live start sit, you started Josh Reynolds as a wide receiver 3 in most places. 6 targets, 2 touchdowns. That follows up a performance of 7 targets in week 1. Now, it's not likely we're going to keep seeing these 2 touchdown games every week. And I think some of this production came while Amon St. Brown was on the sideline. And there is the looming, Jameson Williams will come back. But for now, this Detroit Lions offense is humming. Jared Goff looks good. And Josh Reynolds seems to be the next guy on the pecking order, right behind Amon St. Brown. And if he is to miss any time, because now we're talking about Amon St. Brown having turf toe, Josh Reynolds becomes a very, very intriguing waiver wire play. And so, yeah, I think he's the kind of guy you want to target as maybe that sneaky wide receiver 3 or waiver wire pickup this week.
So we already talked about Nico Collins, and I think Nico Collins is absolutely the guy. If he's available, you need to pick him up. But Tank Dell actually had more targets than Nico Collins did. He just wasn't nearly as efficient with them. Nico Collins has big play upside. He is a better presence in the end zone and the red zone. But Tank Dell, we heard a strong drumbeat out of camp all preseason, especially after he had that preseason explosion where he went for, it was like a 48% target share or something like that, if you remember, Alfredo.
Something ridiculous.
Yeah, and now we've got this narrative, Tank Dell the rookie, building a relationship with CJ Stroud the rookie. Again, I still think Nico Collins is the guy here, but CJ Stroud looked really, really good. So yeah, Tank Dell, he's a guy that is probably going to be the wide receiver 2 on this team. Robert Woods hasn't looked like his old self. Noah Brown is injured now. So if CJ Stroud can support a good offense and Tank Dell is the wide receiver 2 there, he's absolutely worth a stash for now.
Remember, CJ Stroud was vouching for Tank Dell to be the pick for the Houston Texans. Mm-hmm. As a rookie, without ever taking a snap, he already had more authority in his franchise than Aaron Rodgers ever did for the Green Bay Packers. Sadness. So yeah, Tank Dell, good pickup there. I'm going to finish off the wide receivers from my list with Michael Wilson, rookie wide receiver for the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals look better than we thought. It's weird. It's kind of weird. They look better than we thought. Josh Dobbs looked phenomenal to start that game. I think he finished this week as a top 3 fantasy quarterback with Monday Night Football pending. If this team is still in games and they're winning games, Michael Wilson and Marquise Brown, for that matter, too, and all of these pass catchers in that Cardinals offense become pretty valuable with the return of Kyler Murray. So I would say Michael Wilson, deep leagues, he's a stash. He tied for the team lead in receiving yards this past week. That's a guy that I want to hold on to because when Kyler comes back, this Cardinals offense could look even better.
I'm going rogue, Alfredo. For anyone watching the show, Alfredo and I compare who we are going to talk about on this waiver wire show, and I have Darius Slayton written down, and I do think that he's a decent, high floor option that you can pick up, but I'm going rogue. I want to talk about Tutu Atwell instead. Tutu Atwell is 196 receiving yards through his first 2 weeks. He saw 9 targets in week 2. Obviously, that is half of what Puka Nacua saw, but Tutu Atwell seems like he is a pretty prevalent part of this Rams offense, which is a lot better than I think we expected him to. It's going to be really tough to determine how touches are going to be split up when Cup returns, but maybe Tutu Atwell is the guy who retains his role and Puka goes to the wayside. So worth a stash. This Rams offense is one I want to invest in. And Alfredo, I'm sorry for just completely going rogue on this, but Tutu Atwell available in 70% of leagues. I like him as a pickup right now, more than Darius Slayton.
Yeah, no, that's a great one. That's a great one. I'm with it because this Rams offense looks good. And if you're looking for more waiver wire options, right? Like we're doing this here on Monday morning, recording this tomorrow, Tuesday morning, live at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, The Audible with Sigmund Bloom and Cecil Lammy. They're going to be taking your waiver wire questions. They're going to be talking about which players they like to pick up off the waiver wire because everything's going to change after Monday Night Football. And that's when the waiver wire transactions all become real. So check that out here on the YouTube channel. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel so that you don't miss anything. Dave, let's get to our tight ends here. Why don't you start us out with your first tight end?
Dalton Kincaid. I mean, we heard it from Matt Waldman last week. He said Dalton Kincaid is a wide receiver. Say it with me. Dalton Kincaid is a wide receiver. And sure enough, he is. I mean, he runs a route almost every single time he takes a snap. 10 targets and 9 receptions through his first 2 NFL games is really good usage for a tight end. Now, Dawson Knox caught the touchdown, so I think that might skew some people who are just looking at fantasy production here, but Kincaid looks like the tight end one, looks like the better player. I prefer Kincaid over Knox pretty easily.
I'm also going to talk about a rookie tight end who was my tight end start of the week, Sam Laporta for the Detroit Lions. He was the tight end 8 this past week. Once again, that's with Monday Night Football pending, but either way, you're talking about a guy who at worst is probably going to be tight end 10 on the week. You don't see this that often with rookie tight ends where they are plug and play starters and consistently in the top 12. He had 5 targets his first week, 6 targets in his second week. He's caught 10 of 11 targets so far. So yeah, not only is he getting targeted, but he's making the most of them. I think at this point, we're seeing that the volume is coming. It is an offense that is scoring points in Detroit. So I don't know really that the opponent matters a whole lot. If I have Sam Laporta on my team, I'm starting him. And if I don't have him on my team, I'm doing whatever I can to get him on my roster.
Yeah, and you talked about Mike Wilson as a deep pickup at the wide receiver position. This one isn't a deep pickup at all. I think we're looking at Zach Ertz as a potential top 10 tight end again. I mean, this is a guy who was just a tight end 1 year after year after year, and we wrote him off for dead because he was 32 years old coming off an ACL tear. Most people didn't even expect him to play in week 1. He's pulled a 29.5% target share through 2 weeks. He's averaging 9 targets and 6 receptions per game. Very valuable in PPR leagues. Now, Zach Ertz isn't a guy who is going to be running all over defenses and doing things after the catch, but if you tell me I'm getting a tight end who's getting 9 balls thrown his way every single week, I absolutely want that on my roster. I don't care if he's going for 25 yards on 6 catches. 6 catches for 25 yards is better than you're getting from almost any other tight end option, and if he can just fall into the end zone every now and then, sign me up for some Zach Ertz.
All right, we got a couple more tight ends here. I'm going to finish my side off with Chig Okonkwo, a guy who I'm surprised that he'd be available in this many leagues because he was so talked up throughout the offseason. Then DeAndre Hopkins signed in Tennessee, and we kind of lost faith. And Ryan Tannehill and the Tennessee Titans offense looked really bad in week 1. Chig Okonkwo put up a big goose egg in week 1, so I'm sure that's why he became available. But Ryan Tannehill looked better. Chig Okonkwo looked better. He tied for second on the team in targets, and I don't think he's quite yet a starting tight end, but let's go back to all the reasons that we liked him as a draft pick this year. It's the athleticism. It's the target per route run rate. It's the depth at which he's being targeted. It's his ability to run after the catch. These are all things that are still there, okay? It's important that we don't overreact one way or the other after just 2 weeks, but Chig Okonkwo is a guy that I think that if you're struggling at the tight end position to find a starter, maybe you miss out on Dalton Kincaid, Sam Laporta, or any of these other guys, Chig Okonkwo is a guy that I think is worth a stash on your offense.
Now I'll wrap up with another rookie. We've talked about Dalton Kincaid. We've talked about Sam Laporta, and it is basically necessity at this point that if you're going to mention those 2 guys, you got to talk about Luke Musgrave as well. I talked about him last week as being just 2 plays away in his week 1 debut from having a huge breakout performance. He tripped at the 5-yard line. He also had a play where he was wide open for a would-be 56-yard touchdown and got overthrown by just a few feet. And last week, he didn't put up the same numbers, but he looked like he was a very active part of this Packers offense where Jordan Love is running what could be a very prolific offense with a lot of fantasy points. So even after a quiet box score in week 2, I'm still okay picking Luke Musgrave up and playing him as one of those back end streaming tight end ones. Andrew Cooper, our friend over at Fantasy Alarm, always talks about the yin and yang tight end strategy. If Zach Ertz is your boring yin tight end, Luke Musgrave is that yang tight end that could have the huge upside towards the end of the year. So pick him up, stash him, see what happens.
Well, there you go. We got 35 waiver wire targets for you here in week 3. We can catch our breath now. Tomorrow's going to be a little bit more fun, a little less transactional. Tomorrow we'll be back with our rankings and tiers episode where, Dave, week 1, we did the panic meter. Week 2, it's all positivity, man. Let's get the hype meter going. Who are we hyped about? We're going to rank those guys.
Pook Nukem, baby.
Yeah, well, that's an
obvious
stick.
one. It's going to stick eventually.
Thanks. And who do we have as our guest tomorrow? Just want to confirm with you.
Jagger May. It's going to be a fun one. May.
Good old Jagger from our Sunday morning live starts it here on the Football Guys YouTube channel. So join us tomorrow. We're going to be talking about our rankings and tiers. Hype meter. Let's go. Wheels up. Thank you so much to all of you for listening. Thank you to Dave. Thank you to our production team, Julia, Dylan, Jagger, everybody. We'll see you guys next time. Adios.